My guest is Ben Almond, who is the CEO of Engineering Services at SNC Lavalin. Now, Ben joined the company in January of 2021, serving as the Chief Executive Officer, Engineering Services Canada. He's responsible for leading a 3,500 strong team to drive sustainable long-term growth across the transportation, cities and development, power and renewables, life sciences, and industrial markets. It's a broad swath. Prior to joining SNC Lavalin, Ben was the regional managing director for the Jacobs team in Canada. And he's also held several senior positions at Suncor Energy and Imperial Oil. Now, he holds a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering from the University of Manitoba. And he was the recipient of Canada's Top 40 Under 40 Award in 2017. That's quite a CV. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Perrin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start with where businesses find themselves in October of 2022. Like many countries, Canada's looking to jumpstart its post-COVID economy. When you look at the role of SNC Lavalin, and perhaps of the private sector more generally, what role can be played to ensure Canada's economic growth at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Perrin. It's been an interesting ride the last couple of years. I think from an industry standpoint, a government standpoint, economic standpoint, we haven't lived through something as challenging as this has been. And I think if we're really going to thrive moving forward, we've got to focus on that partnership between private industry and government. And I believe that starts with investment here in the Canadian economy from the private sector. And we contribute to that from an industry standpoint through focusing both our capital energy and our human capital energy here in this country. For example, we've decided to move forward with technology and innovation and digital transformation of our business. And that means investment here in Canada. We started this with what we refer to as our Lavalab here in Montreal, and we're embedding technology in everything that we do. Now, what that means is training our people for the future of the industry that we hope to help shape. And that's one component of helping Canada push forward towards the forefront, and having a positive impact on our economy. In that same vein, we're trying to play as a good partner with government as we move forward. I think we've all seen, partnerships gone wrong in the past as we look at major projects and execution of our major infrastructure work across the country. And, historically, we've been focused on partnerships in which someone wins and someone loses. And I think changing that conversation to focus on project objectives and the objectives for the communities in which those projects are moving forward changes the way we engage with each other and hopefully delivers a stronger outcome for everybody. When we think about this, we're seeing it in Canada, in the UK, where government and industry is coming together in a more collaborative fashion, where we populate one team with one common set of objectives. And that's turning into a better outcome for communities and helping those projects progress. And in the end, what that translates to from an economic standpoint is progress and jobs and completed jobs, which really have a positive impact on our communities. And I think, I know you just came out of a session talking about net zero. That's one of the areas where I think industry needs to step up to the plate and help as well. And that's going to be through innovation and bringing ideas to the table. But I hope we can talk about that, Perrin.
I want to come back to net zero very shortly, but just picking up on what you were saying, it really looks as if we need to have a Team Canada approach to get the economy moving the way that it should. But you have a very interesting perspective yourself. You joined SNC Lavalin in January of 2021 after a career that brought you to various parts of our country, as well as working in the United States. So you're uniquely positioned to talk about Canada's competitive strengths and weaknesses. What's your perspective, having worked on both sides of the border, about the ability of the Canadian business community to compete?
Yeah, historically, I've always got to sit at a table where I heard people talk about Canada in this really positive light. It's a great place to do work. We're really collaborative in culture, and we're positive about making things happen in both industry and government. I think that bodes well for our future. The challenge for us is making sure we move forward with some level of pace and we don't wait for someone else to show up and do it for us. The piece where we run into real positive experience is when we have challenges, we do have the ability to collaborate and we have the ability to work together. And I think contrary to what I've experienced in more litigious societies out there, if we approach some of these projects as a collective, rather than sitting on opposite sides of a fence, attempting to get, to have someone come out with a win, I actually do think we can deliver something special here in Canada. And I think that starts with our culture. I can't think of a better way, Perrin, of describing it than as a one Team Canada approach to the economy and the future of the country.
And it's so critical at this point when competition is just increasing every day and the pressures on Canadian business are growing. If we can work together in a concerted way, then we can move some of these obstacles out of the way.
Yeah, almost no better way to describe it is we have big challenges out ahead of us as a country, as a business community, and we have a lot that we can accomplish. We have a lot of untapped opportunity for us here in Canada. If you think about the human capital available in this country, the educational system, and the resources we have available to us, I feel like we've only touched one sliver of this pie. And if we can rally around it, we can probably make a bigger splash globally than we do today.
Let's come back to net zero, which you mentioned earlier. We've just finished a very interesting panel that's focused on the opportunities and the pathways that are needed to get Canada to net zero while still growing the economy. So it's not an either or proposition. And we know that SNC Lavalin has been heavily involved in promoting net zero solutions to its clients. Can you tell us a bit about the role that SNC plays and how you're contributing to the success of your clients?
Yeah, Perrin, there's a few ways that I think we all contribute. I'll start with this just as a base case, right? Like most Canadians, I'm an outdoorsman. I love the outdoors. I think most of us that are here in the room would translate that into caring about the planet and being stewards of the environment. And that has to go beyond just the things we do for fun and move into the things that we do as business leaders, as community leaders. From our perspective, one of the unique things we have, and I know we're not alone, is we have a global view of things that are happening around the world, and we see great things that are happening elsewhere, and we have an opportunity to bring those into Canada. We are in fact doing some things elsewhere, and we're looking at how do we bring that to Canada to help our journey towards our 2030 and 2050 goals. One of those examples in the UK, there are significant real estate holdings that have a real carbon issue. And, we've developed a tool to help them make good decisions, whether it comes down to heating and ventilation, investment in alternate energy sources, to help them reduce their carbon footprint. And that's just, one way. We decided to take a step back ourselves and look at those 2030, 2050 goals, and through the engineering lens, look at, what would it take for this country to accomplish those goals? And do we feel like we're taking the right actions, or are we simply setting out lofty goals with little means to achieve them? And what we came to realize is that those goals could be achieved, but we're probably not. We have a lot more to do if we want to achieve those goals, and it's going to have to go a lot further than us simply talking about the goals and move into direct actions, both with respect to carbon, but also with respect to the supporting infrastructure that helps us get there.
So let's, if you'll pardon the pun, drill down in one of the sectors, which is energy, which obviously is going to have a key role to play in terms of our achieving these targets. What are your thoughts on the role of the energy sector in Canada's journey that we're underway on at the present time to try to achieve net zero?
Yeah, there's no doubt that we have a major shift going on around energy transition. How do we move towards a low carbon footprint society? And when we looked at this, it's really clear that if we're to shift towards electrification, in any and all industries, this is going to increase electricity demand drastically versus where we are today. And that means we've got to look in the mirror and say, how do we meet that need as a market? And I think that's got to come from a few different places, right? One of the things that's one of the unsung heroes of Canadian economy and Canadian industry is our nuclear sector. right? Nuclear technology is safe, it's reliable, it's clean, it's a low carbon source of electricity. And if we're actually going to meet this aggressive electrification scenario, a sizable portion of that baseload power supply needs to come from nuclear power, as well as our hydro generation, right? Now, none of this means that our historical resource sectors are going to go away, but the shift in how we approach doing that work has to be something that we take on with some level of intention. And I believe that, you know, most of the operators in that space are thinking about how they themselves adjust their own footprint, approach, and impact to live up to the needs of what the industries are calling for. And that's looking different today than it did 20 years ago.
It sure is. Last question. Let's talk about your profession. You're an engineer. The caricature of engineers is you're looking, you go to engineering schools in the past, what you would see is a group of young white males. Yet you've been very passionate and talked about the need for diversity in engineering. Why is equity, diversity, and inclusion in your profession so important to you?
Yeah, Perrin, this one became a lot more important to me in 2005 and thereafter. So, you know, if you are simply on the video conference and don't know me, you know, I'm a middle-aged white guy, right? You know, and there are parts of that history that don't change. But in 2005, I had a mountain biking accident. I was paralyzed from the waist down. I use a wheelchair. And that changed the lens that I look on the world through. You know, I hadn't experienced a lot of challenges that other people face day to day. And I came to the realization over the past, you know, 18, 19 years that this world is full of people that all have their own challenges. Some of them are very visible, like the ones that I face every day, you know, name a curb or stairs or those types of things. And some of them are not visible at all. And while I deal with this visible challenge out in front of me, I've learned over that time that everybody's facing those same challenges. And part of this was a bit of a learning journey. So I spent the first 10 years I was in a wheelchair, fighting it. So trying to behave as though the wheelchair didn't exist, trying to get others to behave as though they didn't see the wheelchair, and hoping to just be, you know, one of that fit in, but like everybody. And I've come to the realization over time that the differences and the challenges that we face and the things we've experienced and had to overcome, you know, in our life journey, you know, actually makes you more valuable and brings some different ideas to the table when you're starting to face big problems and challenges, whether it's as a team, as an industry, as a community. And as I've grown as a leader, I've gotten to experience firsthand what it looks like when you can create the space for people to bring those different viewpoints into the room, into the boardroom, into the meeting room, to challenge the solutions that you have out in front of you. And I think the more diverse your team is in life experience, you know, it doesn't all have to be about the way you look. It has to be about your experiences and the things, the spices that were thrown in as you've lived your life, because that brings different solutions to the table as you start to face the big, ugly challenges that are out in front of us. And, you know, the last couple of years, we've had some big, ugly challenges we didn't necessarily see coming with COVID and things like that. And in the years to come, we've got some other big challenges out ahead of us when it comes to, you know, dealing with energy transition, net zero, looking after the planet while we try to progress, you know, economically and as a society. And I think the way that we can attack that the best is if we create that space for everyone to bring their own true selves to the table, because we'll get better answers, we'll challenge the old norms. And you know, to be honest, it'll be a lot more fun than it has been, you know, just being one of and being afraid to share some of those experiences. So from a personal perspective, you know, I really have started to embrace some of those differences and embrace them in my team. And I think it makes us better for it. And, you know, I'm really proud to continue to strive every day to create that type of space that people feel comfortable sharing the things that they're up against. And while I may not ever experience them, you know, being someone who's willing to get in there with the team and help knock down those barriers and create a spot where we can be more successful. And it's really important to me personally. It's really important to us as a company that we bring varied backgrounds to the table, we value everybody's contribution and stay focused on engineering that better future for a planet and its people.
So it's certainly a question of fairness, but it's much more than that. It's a question of opportunity as well for all of us to benefit from the diverse points of view.
Yeah, absolutely, Perrin. I think this is one of those places where you have the little light bulb go on above your head after you start to hear something that, was a life story someone experienced on a wraparound porch in Alabama, informing, an engineering solution in Regina, Saskatchewan, right? And these things are, they're embedded in everything that we talk about, everything we bring into the room. And I learn something new every day from people that I get to interact with. And I'm really excited about that. So, the more diverse backgrounds and inclusive an environment can be, the more we learn every day. And it just gets it, to be honest, you can wrap that smile around your face and be excited about where you're going. And the fact that, you've taken some unforeseen inputs into the process that just made the outcome better.
Ben, it's been a real pleasure and an inspiration to be with you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Perrin.